introduce you today to Barbara Bree, who is your keynote speaker in this room for the next 30 minutes. And I wanted to give you a little bit about her background. She is a serial entrepreneur, has founded multiple businesses, and she has 30 years of experience in this tech entrepreneurship world. She's also the founder of Athena. How many of you have heard of Athena? Amazing, amazing, amazing organization for women in San Diego. And it was on the founding team of Connect, which spun out of UC San Diego. So she's been really integral to the development of this ecosystem over the past several decades. And I'd like you to give her a big, warm welcome. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Is this working? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Well, I'm honored to be invited here today as part of the inspiration track. But quite frankly, I think the last thing entrepreneurs need is that you're lacking is inspiration. The fact that you're an entrepreneur shows that you have inspiration, that you're filled with passion and drive and dedication. And as someone who spent 30 years in the entrepreneurial world, I know it's not always easy. And sometimes you can't beat the macro, and sometimes luck is what's going to make the difference in whether your company makes it or not. I was asked to share today a little bit about my personal story. As many of you may know, I was in the tech world for 30 years, and I ran for public office for the first time in 2016. I currently serve on the San Diego City Council. I represent District 1, which includes La Jolla, University City, the entire UCSD campus, and Carmel Valley, Del Mar Heights. Do any of you live in my council district? Yay, wow, this is great. And I think many of you may know I'm running for mayor. Yay. So how did a nice Jewish girl from Philadelphia, who's 70 years old, and there's no secrets when you're running for politics, running for office, no secrets, end up where I am? So I'm going to share just a little bit of my life story, a little bit of what I see at City Hall, why I'm running for mayor, and want to spend most of the time hearing from you as to what your major concerns are. I was very blessed to grow up with an amazing mother, Adelaide Bree, and I've kept her last name in honor of her. She was a woman ahead of her time. She also got divorced when I was a teenager. She went to work full-time at a job where she was paid less than the comparable men, and there was nothing she could do about it. Think the mid-60s. She also experienced pay inequity, sexual harassment, everything. And the most important thing she did for me was empower me to believe I could succeed in the business world. And I earned an MBA from Harvard in 1976 at a time few women were getting an MBA anywhere. And I had an untraditional career. And that's thanks to my mom also, who taught me to follow my passion, not to follow what other people told me I had to do to fit in. And it is because of my mom, I've also spent a large part of my life empowering other women. As you heard, I'm the founder of Athena San Diego, which now is a thriving organization with over 500 members. We're here at Sony today, which is a major corporate sponsor of Athena. I started Athena informally back in 1989. It became a real organization in 1996 when I left UCSD to become an entrepreneur. I'm also the founder of Run Women Run, a nonpartisan group I started in 2008 to elect more women to office. I believe that when you have diverse people at the table, you make better decisions. In 2008, I looked around and noticed that women were a minority of elected officials in San Diego County. And so that's been a core part of my life. I honestly only ended up leaving Connect and becoming an entrepreneur because I had to. My first marriage ended in '93. I had two daughters, 8 and 11. I had a job at UCSD, but it didn't pay the bills, and I had to figure out a way of supporting my family. And I had been around all these amazing entrepreneurs at Connect, and I figured I could do it myself. And in 1995, my now second husband, Neil Centuri, and I don't know if any of you have met Neil, he's a character in the startup world here in San Diego. At the time I met him, he was an out-of-work real estate developer like my first husband. Went from one to another. And he started coming to all the events that Connect did. And he came up with the software idea for the software company we started in '95. So Most of you were alive in '95. You know, the internet was just coming. The Pentium chip had just been developed. But laptops were expensive. They were bulky. When you went to a hotel room, you had to, plug into a phone line in the wall. You had to manually configure your settings. It was a pain. And our first product was internet and email kiosks that looked like a pyramid. We sold them to telecom companies that put them in airports and other public venues, and you could walk up to them and get your email and surf the web. And our software, which was here in San Diego, remotely controlled everything. And that morphed into software that allowed you to get the internet on your laptop in a hotel room. Now, I was alive when the cloud was just the cloud, before Amazon controlled the cloud. And in the early days of our software, the hotel had to be running our software on the server in the basement or in the closet, and you had to have our software on your laptop. I mean, today, it's seamless. We take it for granted. And we had some near-death moments in this company, as most startups do. We were down to twice, having enough money for one more payroll, and we were blessed that an investor walked in the door each time. And we sold the company successfully. It was eventually purchased by Cisco in 2000, which essentially dismantled the company, but I often like to say that version 10,000 of what we developed is in every Cisco product today. And then I was on the founding team of Proflowerscom. On day one, I was the VP of marketing when there were 5 of us, and I was there for the first 5 years. And after that, I realized that my real passion lay in working in the community, became an angel investor, went on nonprofit boards. FYI, my daughters were growing up all during this time. 93 to 2003 were very tough times. Many of you may have teenage daughters. It's a tough time. I'm a single mom. They hated me on alternate days of the week, sort of like the parking rules in New York City. Fortunately, we survived each other. They're 34 and 38. They both married men I love. And so far, I have 2 grandchildren from them and a 3rd grandchild from one of my stepkids. All of whom live here, so I am really, really lucky. But I found out that my real passion lay in getting involved in the community. And I became more involved with Run Women Run. And then something pivotal happened where my office was. So our office has been in La Jolla Shores on Avenida de la Playa since 2004. And our street was being torn up over and over again to have the same work done. And has that happened in any of your neighborhoods? It's like, why can't the city get this right? I'm frustrated. So I still remember the family dinner, February 2014. My daughter Rachel then was working for the mayor in Chicago. She's home. We're sitting around, and she'd been encouraging me for a while to run for public office, and I'm complaining about the street being torn up yet again. Irene's parents actually live near the street. Yeah, they've experienced this many times. It's actually happening again, but for a different reason. Yeah. And she says, "Mom, it's time for you to run for city council, and I will come home and run your campaign." How could I pass that up? She came home. She ran the campaign. I was the underdog. I was outspent 2-1. I still won. And gratefully, her husband-to-be moved here. They got married. There's both school teachers here, so it was a great deal for me. And I got to City Hall. And I was astounded at what I found when I got to City Hall. Remember, I've spent 30 years in the business world, and before that, I was a journalist for the Sacramento Bee and the LA Times. I'm used to accountability, and I'm used to transparency. That is not the culture at City Hall. There is no accountability, no transparency. The place is a mess. And I stood up to this culture immediately. A few months after I got there, the Chargers announced they were leaving San Diego. And I found out that the mayor had been meeting behind closed doors for over a year with a group of private investors called Soccer City. Behind closed doors for over a year to discuss the most precious land that the city of San Diego owns in Mission Valley. And he was supporting their effort. And they did a citizens initiative, which means they went out and collected signatures. They brought it to the council, and we had 2 choices. We could tell them it was so wonderful, we're just going to give them the land, or we could put it on the ballot. I actually took the time to read the more than 1,000-page measure, and I opposed it. And I was the first elected official to stand up and say, this is a ripoff, to the taxpayers of San Diego. And I was out there by myself at the beginning. No support. Soccer City ran tens of thousands of dollars of ads on social media criticizing me. But I knew I was right. My business background had given me the confidence that this was a scam. And as it turned out, they went down in flames at the polls in 2018. Next thing, and I would be here all night, but I'm just going to give you 3 examples. If I could go through all the things. The next thing was dozens of residents started calling my office with higher than normal water bills. Maybe some of you got a higher than normal water bill. And each time we would complain to the Public Utilities Department that runs our water. And each time they would get back to us and say, I bet they had company, they overwatered their lawn, they had a leak, and they didn't take these complaints seriously. I knew there were too many complaints, that something was systemically wrong. And that is when I demanded an independent audit of the water department. There have been a series of audits. They have found a zillion things wrong. We would be here till midnight if I went down the list of everything. And the last example I'll give is 101 Ash Street, the old Sempra headquarters, which has been in the news lately. So the city council, before I got there, voted to buy the building. It's the old Sempra headquarters, 101 Ash Street, because they believed they needed room to expand for their employees. This was without having a long-term real estate plan. In any business, before you would buy a building this size, you would say, how many employees do I have? How many am I going to have in the next 3, 5, 10 years? And where do I want them to be? Like, do I want them to be downtown? The city has property all over the city. The county years ago moved most of their operations to Kearny Mesa. So they bought this building without a real estate plan. They also bought the building exempting the seller from all liability. They didn't do basic due diligence. And we are stuck with this building. Shortly after I got to the council, I didn't understand all of this when I got to the council. All I understood was it's sitting empty. Why is nobody working there? It's costing the taxpayers $18,000 a day. Just again, no accountability, no transparency. They bought it, but it was sort of murky. Who was responsible? In any business, you buy a building like this, someone is responsible for getting people in on a timeline or whatever work. You've got to have internet access, whatever you need, you get it done. But this had kind of fallen through the cracks. It was embarrassing. And so I shone a light on that. City employees finally moved in December. It sat empty for almost 3 years. And then last Friday, a week ago, they moved out because of a second series of asbestos violations. How did I learn about the first set of asbestos violations? Last August, I happened to walk by the building and I saw the warning sign on the door. No transparency. The mayor never told us. This is not a way to operate a city. So I am running for mayor to end this politics as usual culture, to bring accountability and real management experience to City Hall. Being in public life has been one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and at the same time, frustrating. But I am a problem solver. That is sort of in my DNA. It is who I am. And I want to use my executive abilities to solve problems on a big scale that will transform our city, hopefully, for generations to come. So that's a little bit of my story. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about my life, about issues at City Hall, about anything that's on your mind.
So we have 10 minutes and open to questions.
Yes.
What do you find resilience? Where do you find it?
So I had a mother who was very resilient, so I grew up with a resilient mother, and I think that was key in having this role model. Remember, she got divorced in the mid-60s, enormous discrimination at work. She was in a large Philadelphia ad agency, first woman executive. She went back to school, got a master's in psychology, became a best-selling author, and I watched her reinvent herself over and over again, which essentially is what I've done in my life. I've not had, my career has not been the normal straight line. So I'm blessed. And as I read studies about children, I think resilience is one of the most important things that kids need, because we're always going to have failures and stumbles. So it's the ability to pick yourself up and do the next thing.
Oh,
Sure.
sorry.
So with the resilience also comes, you have to get other people's buy-in as a politician or a business person. How do you go about that? How do you create or develop your partners?
So anything I've ever done has been as part of a team and building a team around me. So when I had the idea for Athena San Diego, you know, I called 10 women in the tech and biotech world in San Diego. I said, let's meet. You know, we met over a period, well, first we just started doing informal lunches, but then when we wanted to turn Athena into a real organization, we met for a year to figure out how the organization would be structured, what our bylaws would be. So I've always been very good, and same with Run Women Run. I've got a core group together. So I've always been able to understand what I'm good at, what other skill sets I need to find. I've always been good at listening to the customer, which is key in any business you do, and then figuring out what to do next. But I think you have to be willing, you have to build a team. And I've also been lucky to have a group of people around me, both women and men, who will tell me when I'm full of shit. You know, it's very important. And, you know, to whom I can turn to, you know, for candid advice. So it's very important to have that.
Hello, my daughter campaigned for you in the election. So she's very happy I'm here. So what's your number one priority if you become mayor?
So we have a strong mayor form of government. The mayor really is the CEO of the city. So first of all, it's to change the culture, which you do by who you put in key positions, which the mayor can do. And then as a specific issue, it's addressing homelessness in a meaningful way, starting with addressing the root causes, which for many people is addressing mental health and substance abuse issues. And doing this in a data-driven way and holding organizations accountable for the money that they get.
So I have a question, maybe it's more of a dialogue, and I apologize that I just stepped into your seminar here. My name is Chip Parker.
I've known you a long time, Chip.
So I know your husband, and again, I apologize because maybe you covered this, but when you look at San Diego and you say, and I remember, I'm sure you do too, all the way back in the days of let's bring venture capital here, and they got mission started, and how do you see, or what can we do, because we're at a venture conference, you know, to get more venture capital, and we know we're underserved.
Yes.
But yet the market is just continuing to growing and being one of the greatest things. I'm getting ready, I'm taking a 20-year vision that I started up in Orange County that I'm bringing down to San Diego and I'm launching this year in this community because I believe the community is here. But what can we do, or what would you do, or what would you suggest in a leadership role?
Right.
That we start to make it more robust?
I have a lot of ideas on
Oh,
that.
I'm sure you do.
So I worked at Connect in the early days, from 86 to 96. And access to capital was a big issue then. It's a big issue now. I mean, now we have a vibrant angel network. We did not have that back then. So my vision for our city comes out of my long-term involvement in the innovation economy and my long-term support for the arts. So it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So I know we're up here in Rancho Bernardo, which is an employment center. My vision is a major tech employment center downtown. Which is where a lot of the millennials are going to live, near the downtown. Housing is cheaper in the South Bay. We already have fairly good transit coming into downtown from the South Bay and the East, so I view it as both an economic and environmental imperative. There's a new owner of Horton Plaza, Stockdale Partners. They have been talking to a zillion tech, mostly tech, not biotech companies that want a presence here. That will be the start. And our little software company back in '95, we were downtown. As mayor, I will lead a real RFP, a real request for proposal for the City Hall site, which is City Hall, Golden Hall, and the City Operations Building. That will be a major catalyst in transforming downtown. I don't know that we're ever going to have a lot of venture capital based here, but they don't necessarily have to be based here, but they need to know our capital comes from all over the world, and they need to know that this is a great community in which to invest. That's why I think it's so important to have a mayor who comes out of this community, who speaks their language, who will be a great representative for San Diego all over the world.
Thanks,
So who hasn't had a question?
I know that bringing technology to .gov is very hard. There's a lot of blocks, people don't want to change things too fast. How do you plan to bridge that gap between, bring entrepreneurship into the government? You want to change things very fast. Let's change the server, let's change the platform, let's change everything.
So I'm going to be counting on all of you as an advisory task force. And the city actually has a and muddled track record with how it has adopted new technology. So, yeah. So I don't know if any of you are with a company called Acela, but many years ago, before I was on the council, the city bought Acela software for our development services department. It's turned out to be a disaster in terms of how it's been implemented. It's still behind schedule, over budget. So when we even do buy technology, sometimes we do it in a very bad way. And that needs to change because we're a city of 1.4 million with 11,000 employees. I wanted something very simple when I got to City Hall. I said I want to be able to use Salesforce.com to track all of our constituent requests, and I'm not allowed to. Kind of unbelievable, right? Okay.
Well, so would you create some type of Athena will connect?
Well, I want to create an advisory task force for the mayor on how the city, look at how the city is using technology now and how we could be using it more effectively.
Well, I think you'd be very effective with that, with your network.
Yes.
And the resources that are available to hit that note.
Yeah.
Very
No,
robust. That's a great
it's
idea.
available, and I'm comfortable in this world. So,
Yeah.
who hasn't asked a question? Yes.
So you mentioned breaking up the roads. So the city often does that in your neighborhoods as well. What is your approach to changing that mindset in which the operations can be implemented?
Yeah, so this is actually basic technology today in terms of knowing that when a community is going to get underground. What happened in Avenida de la Playa was we had a faulty sewer system, so when we would get a lot of rain, the pipes would burst. It wasn't a question of so that was why they never did it right. So that's why they had to come back and do the work over and over again. But with technology, we know what's planned in terms of undergrounding, so we can wait to redo a road, if the utilities are going to be undergrounded in the next year or so. I mean, it's very common sense what we're able to do. It's more that we do a good job when we do it. Yes.
Can you share a little bit about how you're interested in partnering with universities here in San Diego and what role universities can better play in terms of being a partner and helping you achieve your goals and objectives?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting, I spent 10 years at UCSD, so, and as part of my council district, and earlier I just saw Sujit Day, who's one of the lead, I don't know which university you're at, I can't see it.
UC San Diego.
Okay. And so UCSD, if there were no UCSD, probably none of us would be here. I mean, it's really been the catalyst for the innovation economy. So we're becoming a hub for transportation companies, and the university is doing tons of research on autonomous vehicles and all the things that go along with it. And so I view the university as a resource of experts that I want to be in constant contact with to help me think about where the city's going, what new industries are coming, how they need support, from where in the world, and who can I reach out to help. And I'm on the campus a lot.
So
my second.
we have to close this session. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you all very much for coming.